enough to turn them off or put them on silent. This time I will lead us in the prayer. Councilman Butcher will lead us in the pledge. Lord, how we thank you for every good and perfect gift. Thank you for this day, and thank you for what you have done. And Lord, we are praising you in advance what you're going to do. We ask you to continue to cover our city, touch our hearts, souls, and mind that be acceptable in thy sight. Let us handle this meeting in a Christ-like manner. And at the end of the day, whatever we do, we ask that you would get some glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you would face the flag and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. RJ, would you check to make sure the mics are in good shape? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Taylor.
Present.
Councilman Brooks.
Here.
Councilman Telefarrell.
Here, ma'am.
Councilman Butcher.
Here.
Councilman Jackson.
Here.
Councilman Green.
I'm here.
Councilwoman Bowman.
Present.
Thank you. Tomorrow I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Administrative Conference meeting Monday, June 12, 2023, and the City Council meeting Tuesday, June 13, 2023. Does any council member have any awards or recognition of distinguished guests not to exceed 15 minutes today?
Mr. Chair, I don't
Yes.
see Ms. Moore here. I would like to extend my condolences to Mr. Alan Clark on the passing of his wife.
Yes.
Ask that we take a moment of silence for him, please. Thank you.
Councilman Jackson, I didn't see you in the audience so short, I couldn't see you. Would you come up and just have a word of prayer for our city and for Mr. Alan Clark and for our entire city? Would you do that for us at this point?
Mr. Chairman, and to the council, I feel compelled to do so. So if you would, let's pray together. God, how we thank you now for the benefit and the privilege of this day and for the freedom that we enjoy to be able to gather to democratically lead our city. Thank you for these women and men who have given of their time and talent and treasure to serve in this capacity. And we thank you for the business that is before them to the extent that they have the capacity. Lord, I pray you give them the ability to work along with this administration to do what is best for the city of Shreveport. Then today we recognize there's so many civil servants who make up the city of Shreveport and its employees, all who have significant roles. We pause today to remember Brother Alan Clark, who is mourning the passing of Brenda, his wife. We pray now for their family, for all who knew her, for her family. Thank you for the indelible etch that her life has left for so many. And we pray for Alan's strength and for his encouragement even in this season of his life. Thank you for our city. Thank you for those who've committed to putting their hands and resources to the wheel of leading this city. I pray you give them the wisdom and the understanding and give them the civility to do it in a way that will honor not only the citizens of this city, but more importantly, will honor you. I ask it all now in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Ms. Moore in.
I hadn't seen that.
Okay. Councilman Jackson.
I've asked members of the Lighthouse initiative to come to this meeting. If y'all can come to the podium, please. They did a presentation before for City Council, and we were present. I think we all heard the presentation, but in lieu of what has happened the past couple of weeks, in lieu of what's happened this morning, I think we definitely should give them our undivided attention. I'm asking the administration, this council, to hear this presentation and figure out a way in order to get this initiative funded. Our community cannot withstand these types of storms, financial storms, without us having a plan. So I want to thank SWEPCO for everything that they're doing. I want to thank this council and Cattle Commission for everything that they're doing, but I also want to make sure that we're being proactive and we're making Shreveport, Bossier area a better and safer place. We're in hurricane season now, so we don't have time to just continue to think about this. So again, I'm asking everybody to put their thinking caps on how we can find the proper funding to get this program fully funded so our citizens will be in a better position for the next storm. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you to the chairman, to Councilman Jackson, to all of you who were serving the entire council. Didn't realize I'd be back this quickly, but I want to just be a good steward of the time that you've given. I think the chairman said I had 15 minutes.
That's a short.
Just want to say thank you to so many people, and I don't direct this at you, even though I'm standing there, but for so many people who've done so much over the last 8 to 10 days, really, as the city has been impacted in ways that no one could have ever imagined. We came before, I think, to share with you that we had spent time from the governor's office to the Public Service Commission to the Cattle Commission, and have been here. We talked to the mayor. We talked about how we make our communities more resilient. There's no question about the need for resilience. The question very often is, how do we do it? And how do we make our communities more resilient? And for many of us who are involved in the interfaith work of Northwest Louisiana, as well as those of us who are involved in Together Louisiana, we've been looking at solutions, not just problems, but solutions. We have successfully completed 3 projects in New Orleans already. One would argue that there is a lot more need on the Gulf Coast for this resiliency much quicker than perhaps in Northwest Louisiana. But one might be misinformed not to note that what happened on last week speaks to the fact that there is nowhere that is safe from natural disaster. The issue just is whether or not we are resilient in our response. Again, men and women of the city, the parish, SWEPCO, and others have done everything that they, I think, reasonably and possibly could have done. But people who live in our communities, we want to be sure we're doing everything we can do as well. So when we brought this project to you, this Lighthouse projects, the whole idea was that we make our communities more resilient by having trusted spaces in our community that exist already and who have a reputation already of opening our doors and serving people, not just when there are catastrophic storms caused by things like wind and rain, but in the community where I serve, in Councilman Green's district, and as well as many other districts, we have people who don't need wind and rain to find themselves in a storm, very often in financial storms and otherwise. And so we are accustomed to feeding and to taking care and sheltering people. And so when these things happen, we become kind of a natural place to try to respond. And so we're trying to seek to find ways to build our own capacity to serve more people. And so the project that you are maybe all aware of, I think, we talked last time about the fact that each of us who are in one of these spaces. We hope to have 20 of these spaces in the next few years. We're starting with a pilot project of 2 of those spaces and looking to expand to 4 as soon as the next month, and trying to continue to build it out. But of course, those costs in order to do that. We were successful actually about 2 weeks ago before the Cattle Parish Commission. We'd actually started in April or sometime like that, and we had been going back and forth, a lot of questions, and we tried to dot every I and cross every T, and there was another T and another I at every meeting, and we kept doing it until 1 week exactly, Thursday before that storm happened. We had come to an agreement. They had voted to give us $500,000 as long as we could match with $500,000 outside dollars. The day before, the presentation I made at that commission meeting that day, in hand I had a letter that the day before we had received $500,000 $500,000 from our partners in New Orleans who would match the $500,000 that we were able to get from the commissioner. So we're down the road there, but in our process of being down the road, the storm happened. And so we had to kind of regroup and began to start to serve in ways that we have anticipated as we build resilience, but we had to do it now. And so without the benefit of any of those things, and we haven't been able to expend any of those resources, but we do now feel like that's a reason to double down on our efforts, because we've seen, not just experimentally and not what could happen possibly, we've experienced that it does happen. And so I really think that says to you all, when we came, I think the previous time here, Ms. Moore talked to us, I think, following the meeting to talk about finding perhaps federal resources that could create a part of that. We were just trying to raise that $1 million back then, and grateful for people like Foster Campbell, our Commissioner Campbell, and the commission, but there's still a lot of work to be done. We presented, as I said, to the mayor, we presented it to you all, and we just hope that something that's happened over the course of the last couple of weeks will affirm the need for more resilience. And folks like to have, we can go back and forth and debate about forms of energy and all those kinds of things, but what we cannot debate about is the necessity for resilience. And so we just wanted to talk a little bit more about that, to give you an update, I should say, on where we were with that. We've been able to serve quite a few people. Yesterday at 1 o'clock, we closed our shelter. That was an overnight shelter with the last 2 people having to get hotel vouchers, but everybody else was gone now. And so I do want to commend the city and tell you that I think you have to double down and begin to, stay vigilant on these cooling centers, because it's hotter now than it's been, perhaps one would argue than ever before, I should say. But commend you on those things that you do at parks and other public spaces, because one thing that's sure that we need that. We had 8 people left after electricity had come back on. Those 8 people were folks who just didn't have a roof. The electricity wasn't their issue, shelter was their issue. And so we ended up staying open 2 or 3 days longer than we possibly would have, because they needed shelter. So just want us to be reminded of those things, that even as we exhale from these things, that when this morning comes, we get real antsy again, because we realize that we could be without power, and there are some folks who, notwithstanding, are still without power. So just want to encourage us to continue to do whatever we can to invest in resilience in our communities. Thank you.
Is that it, Council? You wanted Ms. Moore?
Yes.
She's here.
Ms. Moore. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
In lieu of this storm, we know that there was quite a bit of significant damage that was done. A lot of homes that experienced significant damage, some that do not have insurance. So we have the meter heads and a lot of meter boxes that were torn off homes. So just as Pastor Jackson said, you have those homes that are still without power, because you run into that particular situation, whereas that you can't restore power until you get those things replaced. So can you speak to about some of the resources that will be coming available for some of the citizens here in the city? And I know that the parish is doing some things as well.
Certainly, but first let me clarify. With community development block grant monies, you just cannot directly support a disaster unless
Correct.
It's a nationally declared disaster. So I just can't.
Can you say that again?
Unless it's a nationally declared disaster, meaning declared by the President of the United States of
Correct.
America. What that means for us is that we're moving existing funding that supports very needed things in our community to support these disasters. However, as a result of us looking at roofs anyway, looking at some of the conditions of trees on houses and houses just in deplorable condition, you probably wouldn't even imagine that we were looking at a roof program anyway. We decided to include in this roof program those that have been impacted by this disaster. We cannot give them a priority, however they can apply. That application should be coming out hopefully next week. so that anybody within the city limits of the city of Shreveport that meet eligibility requirements can apply for these funds. They're for roofs that have holes in them, shingles falling off, different deteriorated surfaces as it relates to the roof. The house, however, has to be structurally sound because we're not going to be able to address any other conditions within that house other than a tree on the house or a deteriorated roof. We were also looking at the meters, but it is our understanding that SWEPCO would pay for the meters in case of a storm. Therefore, we're looking at any other costs that the homeowner may have as relates to replacing the meter. So if they have any cost related to replacing the meter, then we would consider funding that as a result of that. We will certainly partner with the parish and any other funders as it relates to this. We've also had an inquiry into HUD as to what we can and cannot do, and we will let you know that as soon as we find out.
Okay, and so we'll try to update that information, Mr. Mayor, on our Facebook page, as much as information that we can
Yes,
get.
ma'am. As soon as that information's available, we'll certainly do that. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I know that the parish has, they're updating information as far as the funding source, I believe through the Providence House. I believe it's their application
Okay.
process for those who are in need. And do remember that Shreveport does sit in the parish of Caddo, so you are eligible to apply for that. But I do want individuals to also remember that if you have any damages to your home and your business, to apply at damage.la.gov. It's very, very important that you do that. And we will keep pushing this information as much as possible, because it's very, very important that we get that information out there.
And
to
I
our
would also
citizens.
encourage our citizens to call 211, the Red Cross, and hope for the homeless.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think I got Dr. Ms. Martha from the food bank. Ms. Martha, how are you?
I'm great. How
I'm
are
sure
you?
your phone has been ringing off
It
the hook.
has. It has.
Now tell us what the express need is or what we have for the food bank right
So
now.
briefly, I will just give a few remarks about the food bank and our network and the way we function, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today, so thank you. The food bank deals with disaster year-round. A disaster doesn't have to be a flood or a hurricane. It could be a family disaster. And so our network is set up to address the need of our communities year-round. We partner with about 130 different nonprofit organizations. These could be soup kitchens, homeless shelters, or church food pantries. And we have food in these locations year-round for individuals to seek if they need assistance. The majority of them are here in Shreveport. Since this power outage, the need has been terrific. I mean, I know you've heard that, and most of us lost our food. But for the folks that we help, the need is very significant. A lot of them, we've heard stories that they had just went and used the monies that they had, their SNAP benefits, to fill their freezer or refrigerator, and they've lost all of that food. We understand there's a gap until disaster SNAP will be turned on, and so we're delighted to be in that space to be able to feed that need. The need is huge, and we would love any assistance that we can get to replenish the food that's currently in our warehouse so that we could get more food out. We have the ability, we have the infrastructure, the warehouse, the trucks, the coolers, the freezer. The only part that's missing is the food. Okay. So we would welcome any support that we can receive to help us get more food to our citizens.
So we're hoping that this allocation will be able to help so we can help our citizens who are struggling to get food.
Absolutely.
In
The
their
need
homes
is
right now.
huge. We have so many calls that we've got our whole team answering fielded calls right now to try and direct people where there's food right now today.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
Does any other council member have any? Mr. Mayor, do you have any awards, recognition of distinguished guests today?
Only a statement, briefly. I have a concise but more specific statement tomorrow. I wanted to make sure and recognize the hundreds of city workers who worked over the holiday weekend, people from Public Works, from SPAR, Property Standards, Fire, Police, the administrative team that was looking for resources and how we would be able to go about getting things done and getting reimbursed through the state for a portion of the expenses that the city had. I'm glad that Pastor is here from Morningstar. I visited the shelter at Morningstar, and I can tell you to a person, the people who were there were greatly appreciative. They were treated with dignity and respect and kindness. It was a fabulous thing that the church undertook, and we are grateful that they did. I'm grateful to SPAR for opening the cooling centers, and they are, by the way, they are open now. The rec centers are open, and they have places for people to get out of the heat and cold water. I want to thank the American Red Cross for all of its efforts, and as well Interfaith was very helpful in gathering information and also providing very good intuitive means of communication, which was very helpful to us. So just to let you know, by last Monday, and this is as of last Monday, solid waste had picked up 175 tons of vegetative waste. That's trees and tree limbs. Streets and Drainage had moved 246 trees from city streets and 141 tons of vegetative waste. That's in addition to the 175. Traffic Engineering worked 110 traffic signal calls. The first day there were over 6,000 911 calls that were handled. So the people who were in a position to do what they needed to do and to assist citizens answered the call. They did so with good humor, with solid customer service in mind, and I am very, very proud of our city people for the response that they made. I hope to have more statistical information for you tomorrow, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Mayor, do you have any other communications relative to city business?
I do not, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chairman, I've elevated you again, but I'm still in state, Mr. Chairman.
Does any member of the, have any concerns for Mr. Green in property standards? Anyone? Thank you, Mr. Green.
Mr. Green.
Oh, hold on.
I'm gonna resend you that other one. It was just still dealing with somebody building their own drainage system that's draining into the city drain. So it's causing some erosion problems at a house in my district.
If I'm not mistaken, I passed it on, but send it again and we'll forward it.
All right.
And Carl Terrace.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, is there a way that you could talk to the police department about putting cameras over on car terraces, a movable camera? However the police department does it, because they keep dumping all the trash over there and they dump it in the field. Mr. Green, them go back and clean it up. By the time they clean it up, they're dumping it again.
Yes, and we're working on some possible portable options as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Let me ask you something, Terrence, on, because I know that we talked about the demolition on some of those, on some of these complexes that we see. When these particular property owners that own these complexes are not bringing these properties up to code, and we have already cited them in the environmental court, what is our next course of action?
When we cited let's say David Raines in particular,
Okay.
we cited for demolition. They did do some stuff, but was it completely brought up to code? No. What they were trying to do was eliminate all of the people before they started working or trying to move them around. It's not necessarily a demolition candidate. And I think it will cost us more money down the line if we try to demolish it. But as far as keeping it clean, they haven't responded to any of our emails or whatnot. So that's why I say we're gonna move forward, because the time is up on the cleanup. But on the demolitions on the other ones, those are most definitely demolition candidates because the backs are out and they're gutted. So we need to do something with them before they fall. And we'll follow through with those two units.
So I guess my next recourse then, Mr. Mayor, is I have a complex in my district that has been cited in the environmental court. The city gave them the opportunity to bring it up to code because it was considered at some points to be uninhabitable. They did not do that. So now all of the tenants are out of that particular property. Now the property is overgrown. They're not responding to any more of our requests. And so now you have a property that is blighted and attracting unwanted guests in that area. That is what I don't want to happen. Overgrown grass, broken windows, part of their construction debris, which they, look like they're not gonna do anything. What is our next recourse as a city? Do we have any state legislation that we can enforce in order to make these property owners do anything? Because they have at least 5 or 6 other properties within the city of Shreveport.
Ms. Taylor, a couple of things. We'll investigate what injunctive relief might be available under existing law, number one. Number two, I have the city attorney's office working on an ordinance that will allow the environmental court to assess a blight lien, which means we could actually put those properties up for sale.
Okay.
And there's a state statute already that permits us to do that, and I have the city attorney's office working on a draft of that to submit to you for precisely these kinds of situations.
Yes, because what I don't want is particularly where you see this in the inner city. So you see these properties, they just sitting up, and then you attracting all kind of unnecessary and unwanted traffic there. And it happens in these neighborhoods. And so these people don't live here. They live in New York and everywhere else. And they do this, or they get another apartment complex that they buy and sell for $10 and do it in another neighborhood. And then we left with this mess. So, okay.
Terrence, on tomorrow, can you give me an update on Lakeshore Drive and Cary Avenue, all construction?
I can give you an update now.
Okay.
When we wrote that court citation, I don't control when they deliver it. So I'll see if the city marshals has an update, but the ball is in their court.
Okay. Mr. Dark, excuse me, for the record, did you check on his contract, all construction?
I will.
Okay, because we can't fight and feed him.
This would be Mr. Williams,
Still
correct?
Yes.
the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Green.
Mm-hmm.
Will there be, I see Mr. Clark is not in, won't be a master plan report. Did everyone receive the budget or actual financial report? I'm sure you'll have it by tomorrow. Public hearings, there's none. Mr. Dark, will you have any legislation to be added?
I don't believe so, sir.
Thank you. Today we will hear public comments on non-agenda items and also agenda items. The vice chair will control the individuals and the time.
Bricker Peoples. Bricker Peoples. I'm sorry, my voice is raspy.
She was in, but she left.
She left. Shalette Holden.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, the Mayor, City Council. I appreciate y'all's time today. I come today representing Hayes on Texas and Royalty Cigar and Hookah Lounge downtown in the Entertainment District. We have had some issues with noise complaints, in the entertainment district, so I would like to present for you all to help us come up with a peaceful resolution to the numerous complaints. I have looked into the noise ordinance, and let me just say, when I opened Hayes on Texas Memorial Day weekend in 2015, we were in an entertainment district. So with that being said, we added the rooftop a couple of years later. We've been in business over 8 years at Hayes. We have not had any negative involvement with SPD, no murders, none of that at Hayes on Texas in 8 years. So with that being said, the only calls that we have had to deal with is the recent few weekends of the other club owner calling about the music, which he calls noise, but I consider it music downtown in the entertainment district. And so I've looked at the ordinance. I believe it was drafted around 2011 before we had the entertainment district, or if we did have the entertainment district, it was not as it is now. So I would like for you all to reconsider from what, and I'm not a lawyer, but from what I can ascertain from it, it looks like it may not even pertain to businesses, but more so residential areas. And but there are some allowances for entertainment places in the ordinance, I do believe, schools and things like that. So I would like for y'all to look at the ordinance. When there's entertainment and festival plaza, it could be heard all over downtown. That's not a complaint. We are here for it. And we enjoy, and we want the people and the citizens of Shreveport to be able to enjoy it as well. And while it is not our goal to be heard all over downtown, I am requesting that the council revisits the ordinance and approve venues with rooftop and outdoor entertainment areas to be excluded from that ordinance. I also would like to voice my concerns about Councilman Gary Brooks. He indicated that he authored legislation to enforce an 11 o'clock noise ordinance in downtown Shreveport. My concern with that ordinance is that it reduces our ability to provide a fun environment for our customers to enjoy. In my opinion, the ordinance is not in the best interest of the businesses that operate clubs, lounges, and restaurants in downtown Shreveport. It would have a negative impact on the district he was elected to represent. As for me personally, as a business owner in the city of Shreveport for over 26 years, our companies have pumped millions of dollars into this economy, have employed well over 1,000 people. And I say that not to brag, but to make sure everybody knows my commitment to the city of Shreveport and downtown Shreveport. We have other venues that we're interested in. We're interested in opening the restaurant back up during the day on the rooftop for lunchtime. And I really would like to come up with a peaceful resolution for us to be able to continue to operate and operate at our full capacity.
Dr. Hold.
Let me just ask this. So you're saying that look at the legislation that we already have. Are you saying if we left the legislation like it is, what difference would it make? Are you saying there are some pieces in there that needs to be changed? What is it that the legislation that we have now that will have everybody basically on common ground? What do we need to do?
The legislation as it is now, from my understanding, and it's not very clear, but it says it has a 50-foot measurement of sound from another business. And so with us being downtown in the entertainment district and upstairs on the rooftop, you can hear my phone ringing from 50 feet. So the complaint, and Friday before last, the other club owner called SPD over 100 times complaining about our music. The same music he plays inside of his club, he doesn't want to hear it outside. We've had meetings with the chief. I've tried everything to try to come up with a peaceful resolution. So I want to appeal to you all to try to help us be able to continue to do what we're doing downtown safely and effectively and make it a fun place.
So you're saying that if I'm playing my music, then within 50 feet, you shouldn't be able to hear it? Is that?
You can hear it, and the ordinance is saying that you can't play it from some interpretation. That's not my interpretation, but some interpretation is that you're not supposed to be able to hear it past 50 feet.
Mr. Mayor, would you instruct the city attorneys to look into this legislation?
I already have,
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Reverend Green. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
One thing, the proposed legislation that Ms. Holden referred to, I've asked the clerk of council to just table that because I think the city attorney is looking into the noise ordinances, so
Okay.
I wasn't planning on moving forward with that anyway.
Okay.
Ms. Holden, how long have your rooftop been in operation?
We opened the club in 2015. We opened the rooftop around 2018, 2019, and it's never been a problem until now
So the complaints only started this year, 2023?
that I am aware of from the owner of the sandbar.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the complaints that you're receiving, are those only from the club owner or are those from residents?
That I am aware of, it's the sandbar, the club owner.
The competition?
Yes. And it's something that just started happening, and the rooftop has been there for 5 years.
Do we know how old the existing ordinance is? Or was it, do we know if the ordinance predates us even having entertainment area?
I actually don't recall. I don't know the answer to your question, Ms. Taylor.
So, Mr. Mayor, the ordinance, I guess, since it's an entertainment district, then whatever ordinance we have should, I guess, entertain that particular district from what I'm understanding. I don't
Mr.
know.
Chairman, if I may, the ordinance really doesn't contemplate the situation. I don't think fully contemplate the situation that Ms. Holden is addressing. And we have a number of places downtown that like to use the outdoors for various things, and it's a matter of trying to find a resolution that everybody has the same correlative rights so that they're not interfering with each other. And that's what I've asked the city attorney to look into. And as a process of looking into that, we determined that the ordinance needs a revamping no matter what because of the things that Ms. Holden is bringing up.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it dates around August 2011 from what I was able to find in my research.
That's correct.
That is 2011. There have been very many amendments since that time, but as the mayor said, I reached out to Councilman Brooks and asked that your liaison officer, RJ, get with the lawyer that I've put on doing the research and see if we can come up with something to present
So,
to council.
this would be my question at this time. So if you have rooftop parties, correct?
Yes.
So going forward, what would be the resolve for Hayes? Because if the ordinance only allows for 50 feet, then they would not be allowed to play music if it's heard over 50 feet, correct? So that means they would have to stop playing music.
Well, that's what I was asking Councilwoman Taylor,
So
because you think about our
what's going
festivals.
to happen at that particular point? If the club receives a complaint from a resident or a business owner, does the ordinance read that complaint comes from a resident or a business owner and then the music has to stop if it's over 50 feet?
The entire ordinance is under review, Ms. Taylor, so that is the way the ordinance reads right now under some circumstances, but I do not believe that's what will be proposed to you.
Well, what I'm saying is, does she have to discontinue having rooftop?
We are trying to work our way through the enforcement with respect to people like Ms. Holden and to the owner of the other establishments that are trying to operate as well.
It still puts her in a catch-22 though, because we don't know where.
There is no owner of other establishments. The only complaint is coming from one place. It's not coming from residents, and it's not coming from multiple places.
Ms. Taylor, we're reviewing the entirety of the ordinance and the circumstances, and we will do our best to come up with a reasonable solution.
Yeah, but that's my question. In the meantime, what happens to their rooftop? Do they need to not have rooftop?
I'll have to defer to the city attorney to answer your question.
So Attorney Tucker, what are they supposed to do in the interim?
It is licensed and permitted, I might add.
The problem is, the ordinance says that if they can hear, if it's 50 feet.
Use the mic.
then it's if it's 50 feet, then it's a violation. And so, you know, you have to comply with the current law. That's all I can really tell you. The officers go out there on a complaint, and I asked them to give warnings, which they did, and then it's my understanding that they went back and they walked off the 50 feet and they could hear it. But that's why we are now trying to revise our ordinance and look at it and, you know, make some changes to it.
Attorney Tucker,
So right now, the law is.
why hasn't it been enforced for 5 years? And what do we do about our festivals that are downtown? Because that was music can be heard from further than 50 feet as well.
First of all, I don't know why it hasn't, I don't know whether or not it has or has not been enforced. I think, I don't know that. So I'm sure that the police officers have given noise ordinance violations. Festivals are excluded. Festival Plaza is excluded from the current noise ordinance that we have now.
Can she apply for a special use permit?
She could apply for a special event permit. She doesn't, they don't need to do that because they already have the rooftop.
But I'm just saying, so she won't be in violation of the 50 feet.
Right.
The ordinance now, I believe, exempts special events.
So what
It's
about
a
like-
problem. It has a lot, we gotta work through it, as the mayor
Right.
has said. We're
That's what I'm
trying to
saying,
work it
and I don't want,
through.
what I'm looking at is, because you have the potential for the business to be halted, and until we can go and find a workable solution, I'm trying to find what's the workable solution that would not impede her business from making money, and where it won't be an infraction upon anyone else. So with that being said, I'm looking at, would the rooftop be eligible for a special use permitting? You all can look that up in the city attorney's office and see logistically what can happen with that while we try to find some type of resolve until we work out the language and come to some workable solution
Okay.
for
Can
the
you give me a
entertainment
call?
district.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
I'll reach out.
Councilman Telefair.
Just a quick question, Ms. Tucker, is that, is there a specific decibel level that goes along with this 50 feet? If it's not 50 feet, and of course we know that peace officers' peace cannot be disturbed. There has to be a complaint filed. And if you're having speakers on a rooftop, obviously that sound will travel further than if you're on ground zero. Yeah. So is there a decibel level? And I have not completely read the ordinance.
I think it's 50.
Can you read the ordinance?
But anyway,
Can I
if we
read
can go,
it?
if we.
Oh, my goodness. The
It's long.
ordinance is, about
28 pages?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am. Yeah, no, the word, it's not like a little short ordinance. It definitely needs to be revamped, I'm telling you.
Because
It's,
the
I mean,
response.
it provides for a noise,
Czar.
yeah, a
Yeah.
noise czar,
Yeah.
if you want to say that, which we need to eliminate. It has not been rewritten, since the early 2000s, and so we need to bring it up to time. And with the difference in the way people play music, you know.
And what the city is calling noise, I call music and entertainment, so if they
Well, it doesn't, but
Can I say
the
something?
noise
Can I
ordinance
speak?
does not just apply to bar, you know, this situation. We got to do it so it'll apply.
So,
Excuse me.
so let me ask you one just.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Okay. We're making this way more complicated than what it should be. You can speak loud and hear someone speaking for 50 feet. So we're talking about music being played in the entertainment district. You hear music on Beale Street, you hear music on Bourbon Street. We are a entertainment district. That's what we are. So it's not noise, it's music. And there is no complaints from anyone but one person. And everybody knows that. And that's Tim Hook. That's it. There is no complaints from anybody else. We don't have any problems, no fights, no shootings. We have the least amount of police calls in downtown Shreveport. Check the records. Matter of fact, we have 0. So we're not talking about anything. We're talking about a business owner who has a problem with us affecting his business because we're getting more business. 50 feet is a very short distance. I can stand in the back of the room and talk loud and you can hear me. So we're talking about music being heard. So it needs to be revamped, and it's not that complicated. It's not a problem. The only problem is one person complaining about it. That's it. That's it. Pretty simple.
Councilwoman Bowman has a question.
Attorney Tucker, what do you do when the Remington use their rooftop?
I think the Remington has a special event.
Special event, okay.
So there's, in the state, oh, I'm so sorry. The Remington has, to get a special event permit, they don't have a permit for a rooftop. So there's a lot that needs to be worked on that ordinance, but I'm going to meet with I'll meet with y'all and we'll see if we can get something worked out, and then I'll report back to Councilman Taylor.
Who has to make the complaint?
I'm sorry?
Who has to make the complaint? Is it a resident that has to make the complaint?
I believe anyone can make a complaint.
Is that what the ordinance says?
On a noise ordinance violation, yeah.
But for this
the
particular
noise
ordinance, does it say resident?
I don't recall whether it says resident, because it also applies to churches. It's not just a residential, it's also churches and other establishments. So, yeah, but we're looking into it because it has a lot of things that need to be changed and addressed. And not just for bars and the downtown entertainment district, but it applies across the board. It applies to vehicles, it applies to everything. So unfortunately, and the 50 feet is pretty standard for most jurisdictions.
School and school events are exempt, so I feel like that we should be able to get a similar exemption from what I read in the ordinance.
There are a lot of exemptions. So we'll work on it. I'm on it. I met with the chief of police to get their input. And again, I reached out to council to get your liaison officer in on it also. I know I talk, I'm not used to the mic. So, and so I'm going to try to reach a temporary resolution so you won't have to stop. But the ordinance is the ordinance.
Would that be a temporary resolution by Saturday?
Friday?
Friday?
I don't know. I'm gonna sit down and meet with y'all and see what we can get worked out, and then I'll, because I don't know.
Because
what they could
again,
be.
if we're want to be open for business, when people come into our community, we have to show they're welcome and not run them off to Bossier. So I think we need to work with her because she's been good. She's been good in the community, at least to get things under control.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
I started that process already from what happened a couple of Saturdays ago. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Pat Brown.
Well, I've already kind of added in.
Yeah, I just want to call your
She's
name
gonna give
for
us
the
some more
record.
time on the mic. I'm
You got
sure.
I
full
just
3
called your
minutes.
name
I
for
look
the
forward
record.
to it. How long I have? How long you say?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, that's cool. So,
Would you state your name for the record?
Patrick Marche Brown, born and raised in Shreveport, Louisiana. This is not a big deal. It's a simple thing, and the only complaint is coming from a club owner. It's not coming from residents. It's not coming from citizens. It's coming from one club owner, and there's a business right around the corner from us called the Garage. They play live music. He's not calling on them. They play it all the time. There's several businesses downtown that's playing music out loud, but they're not getting calls because they're not affecting his business. And when I say affecting his business, he's complaining about people walking down the street, they hear music, that's dancing. Now, we're going to call a thing a thing. I don't think black people dancing in the street is a crime. If you're in the entertainment district, you've been drinking, you feeling good, you walking downtown, you dancing, you bobbing your head, you're moving. He's complaining. He said that is affecting his business. People dancing downtown. And so I understand the concern with people dancing in the street. That is wrong. We don't condone it. But it's not our job to police the street. Inside of our club is safe. It's somebody else's job to police the street. So if people hear our music and they dance in the street, we're not telling them to dance in the street. We're entertaining our guests on our rooftop. So let's call this thing what it is. This guy's upset because he's not getting the business we're getting. And so he's complaining about black people in a majority black city. And that's just what that is. He wants downtown to look a certain way, and it doesn't look how he wanted to look. And I'm not against that. I love all people. Did 6 years in the military, never been arrested, college degree, love everybody. So we've even asked this guy, how low do you want our music so we can kind of meet in the middle? He says he doesn't want to hear our music. No, he doesn't want to hear the noise at all from his front door, which is about 65 feet away. That's not possible. It's not possible to not hear music being played from a rooftop from 65 feet away. The chief, Officer Hines, and several other policemen came downtown. We all walked to the middle of the street between his club and our business. And we turned our music down low enough to where you couldn't hear it past that midway point. He walks over and says, I don't want to hear it at all. And he calls and calls and calls and calls and calls. So to me, it's silly for us to be down here bothering y'all with this when there's so much other stuff going on in the city of Shreveport. Like, we're talking about music in an entertainment district. Like, we should be ashamed of ourselves for wasting each other's time talking about this. We're talking about music being heard in an entertainment district. We're talking about people dancing and twerking and partying in an entertainment district.
Your time is up, Mr. Brown.
Okay, I know my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I got. I'll enjoy y'all day.
Mr. Brown, it's up for real this time.
Okay. Hey, for real? I ain't gonna die.
No.
That concludes public comments. That concludes public
Thank you.
comments.
We will have executive appointments to consider on tomorrow. There are no items on the consent agenda for introduction or to be adopted. Mr. Dart, would you proceed with regular agenda legislation?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. First item is one that's been postponed for a good while and is up for potential vote tomorrow. Councilman Green.
I've talked to Attorney Minutia, and she has that information that the person who's working on it said he needed some more time, so she has the extended date on it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Not a problem at all. The next item is one that was postponed last time, I believe. Dedicates the 7600 block of Gibson Drive in honor of Annie Mae Walker. I think she probably was not able to come last time, so we're going to try to do that one tomorrow. 88 is the annual resolution declaring certain items city-owned property surplus and authorizing the purchasing agent or designated seller to dispose of that. There's an attachment to that resolution that was substituted today. It was provided to Deputy Clerk because more vehicles and items had come on the list since 2 weeks ago. 89 is one we talked about last time where we have to, for reasons that are a little bit strange, authorize the annual payment in lieu of taxes, something that the Northwest Louisiana Finance Authority is issuing to a group called Hollis Creek PV for a project in Sabine Parish, but apparently because we're the designated trustee, I guess, for them, you all have to approve it. It doesn't have any effect on us otherwise. 90 recognizes Ty Johnson, who's a member of the national cheer team. It's one that Councilman Taylor's put on the agenda. He's got quite the resume. I read through that.
Mm-hmm.
He's been quite busy right now.
Yeah.
So is the next one. 91 congratulates Sahil Thora on being this year's Northwest Louisiana Spelling Bee champion. If you haven't read the resolution, I dare you to spell the word jicama, which is the word Mr. Thora pronounced to win that. Had to look it up. Number 92 is allocating $100,000 in riverfront funding to the food bank, as was discussed somewhat earlier. That's sponsored by Ms. Bowman and Councilman Taylor. 93 urges and requests the congressional delegation to make a request for presidential disaster declaration. and to support a supplemental disaster appropriation in connection with the storms in Caddo Parish. And that is sponsored by Mr. Jackson, Ms. Taylor, Ms. Bowman.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on any of these items? Mr. Dork, would you proceed with introduction of resolutions not to be adopted prior to July 11th, 2023?
Yes, sir. 65 amends the riverfront budget. This is the companion to the general fund one, or to the riverfront fund one while ago, to actually allocate the funds to the food bank. And one of the things that we'll try to do in the meantime, those are all subject to.
Hold on just a
Oh,
minute.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We don't have any resolutions for introduction. He's reading ordinances.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm reading ordinances. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Schneider.
We have no resolution. Mr. Dork, would you proceed with ordinance on introduction?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's no problem. 65 is the riverfront one for the food bank. And what we will do, because there's usually a fairly lengthy process after you pass this in order to get it done, we will try to reach out to Ms. Merrick with the various contract documents that we have to do to at least get that process started for you. 66 amends the general fund budget for the police department. SPD has a computer project for a records management system that they have to do to update the system so they can meet the various state and federal data requirements that let us get all those police grants you get to appropriate once a year. And we're having to move about $719,000 to do that. And again, this is one of those, part of this is something where a bill should have been paid last year and wasn't. So this is effectively 2 years' money put in, but we need to do it to get the project done, which it will be at some point this year. 67 closes and abandons a piece of Brock Street from Westport to West 70th. This is a street that's apparently been platted ever since the area was developed long ago. It's never been used. Property owners don't have they would like to get it back, and the MPC has approved that. 94 may be the most 68 may be the most obscure one you'll get for a while. It amends the code of ordinances that has certain effluent discharge limits for what you can put in the sewer system to remove the limit for a metal called antimony. The limit now is 0.07 of a part per milligram or something like that. Apparently, there is no need to have this in the ordinance anymore, and the Water and Sewer Department has recommended that we take it out. 69 amends the Unified Development Code to allow the MPC director in certain circumstances to extend special exception uses by a term of 90 days for not more than twice. 70 is a zoning case 2374C. It's for a piece of property at Piermont and Southern from C1 to C2 for a reception area. The applicant applied for C3, was granted C2 by the MPC, and it was approved unanimously.
Any questions or comments on any of these items? Seeing there's none, Mr. Dork, would you proceed with ordinance on second reading and final passage?
Yes, sir. 60 amends the capital budget for some airport projects. It adds $40,000 to the terminal apron project. That money comes from DOTD. There's $500,000 to the firefighting vehicle. That's 90% federal, 10% state, and $500,000 from the airport's fund itself for the jet bridge construction project so we can get it finished. 61 is the companion to that amends the airport budget so we can move the money from airports to capital. 63 and 64 are companions that amend the general fund to move $4,600 to Sporttrend to remove a bus pad in the downtown area, and 64 is the Sporttrend ordinance that receives that money. And then there was one postponed last time, zoning case 2360C, which is the one for the Centenary football field. Mr. Talferro had asked that be postponed last time.
Any questions or comments on any of these items?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Items 63 and 4. I will ask the director of Sporttrend to be here tomorrow.
He is out of town. His representative is here today, but Mr. Washington
Okay,
is out of
I have
town.
some questions tomorrow. This is in my district, and I was not aware of these ordinances.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, is there any table legislation to be removed from the table today?
There is not.
We have no property standards ABO appeals to consider today. We have no MPC or ZBA appeals to consider tomorrow. Are there any other appeals, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Are there any reports from officers, boards, and committees?
No, sir.
Is the chief here?
Hmm?
Is the police chief here?
Is police chief here?
Yes.
Chief?
Good evening.
Good evening. Chief, we need to see you. I think we're gonna have a, trying to find a way to help to calm our community with a recent video that's surfacing on Facebook. So we need to discuss what we're seeing right now, because it's concerning for those that are in the community, what is being seen right now. And find a way to help to calm our community for real. Yep.
Okay.
If I can ask, I'm not aware. So what video are we talking about specifically?
Quite often, you only see just a small clip. You don't see the entire event that led up to that. There was I guess, a party, a gathering in Atkins Park that turned violent, that the police were called to and got involved in the incident. But as I said, naturally you see just a small piece that was captured on somebody's cell phone that looked like a lot of cell phones that were in the video recording it. But we're looking into it. We definitely are.
And Chief, if you can help us out, what is normally the protocol? What we're faced with, being an elected official, being African American, being looked at as a leader, when these things get out there and it's a lot of comment, everybody has an opinion on Facebook, we're compelled to address it. And we try to lean back because we may not have all the information of all the facts. So we're looking to yourself, Chief of Police, we're looking to the administration in order to give the public something. So whether the information is misconstrued, taken out of context, we're just looking for support that says this is what happened, this is what's going on, and this is how we're going to deal with it. Therefore, we can address our constituents and make sure that they feel safe and comfortable about the leadership that we have in the city.
Sure. And any of you, can feel free to call me at any time, which many of you do, and I'll be happy to share what information that I can. But in some cases, the investigation is in its preliminary stages and information is steady coming in. And I would hate to tell you something and it turn around in an hour or the next day later, it turn out to be something different. But I'll be happy to share whatever information that I possibly can. But just always keep in mind that small, 3 or 4 second capture that you see is never the entire 30 minutes that went on, what led up to it.
We know that part from, we understand that part from your end, but just as Councilman Jackson said, when we receive those calls and what you're seeing and what they're witnessing at that point for them in real time, that's for them in real time. So when they particularly asking us those questions, this is what they're showing us at that point in real time.
Sure.
And so when you see some of those things, even at that particular angle, it's still very concerning.
Sure.
Even for what you see, even if it's just a small snippet of that.
Sure.
And so, again, it is knowing how to respond to what it is that is seen, because we have to try to help to calm our constituents because of what's seen, because our phone is going off with one video after another video after another video after another video, and we don't have an explanation for it when we see it, and how do we respond to it, especially when we're feeling that it is happening so frequently.
Sure. I think the best that you can do is assure anyone that you talk to that you will look into it. You'll you'll do your best to gather all the facts that go along with the incident and get back with them. Because, as I say, looking at 5 seconds of something does not necessarily explain how we got there or how we ended. And quite often, the 5 seconds that you see would be the very worst of the worst of the entire incident. And certainly I can guarantee that no officer that I know of has any intent any day of going out there, getting on their knees, becoming engaged in a physical encounter with anyone. At least I never want to. But you know, when someone calls, complaint is called in about a dangerous situation, we have to respond. That's what we're compelled to do, and to take the necessary action, you know, in the best way to make things safe, to bring things back to order. There's a lot more. There's more to this that I think it would behoove you to see, and that just might help you to see things for really what happened.
Chief?
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So this is an open criminal investigation?
Not at this point, it's not.
Is it just an open investigation?
That is correct.
Okay. And so what I'm hearing you say is there are facts out there that still need to be gathered?
That is correct.
Okay. So to answer the concerns of constituents, what I hear you saying is that this matter remains under investigation by the Shreveport Police Department, and as soon as we have additional information, we'll give that to you. Or I haven't seen it, so I don't want to speak out of turn.
Criminal charges.
I'm sure it's very upsetting considering the testimony here.
Criminal charges was filed in this particular matter, and that's to be resolved with the officer that filed the criminal charges and the court. But what we're looking into is the behavior of SPD officers,
Okay.
whether the behavior was appropriate for the circumstance. So that is an administrative investigation that is ongoing, yes.
All right, thank you.
And as of this point, I have not talked with anyone that was actually involved. I'm doing that on my own because that's the appropriate thing to do for us to look into the matter to make sure that things were done appropriately.
And one more thing to address Councilwoman Taylor's comment. So we have, and I've not seen it, so if we have, then I apologize. So we have, through our social media platforms, actually addressed that this is a matter being investigated by the Shreveport Police Department and so forth and so on. I mean, we've done that. I mean, I'm asking.
Have
we put
it out there on
that
social
seems to be
media?
the natural thing. If
No.
something surfaces that, you know, we try to get ahead of it, not to make excuses or explanations of facts we do not have yet. But it would seem to me that one of the ways to get ahead of it is say, you know, we understand that, you know, whatever took place, you know, has appears to be whatever it appears to be, and that your Shreveport Police Department is actively conducting an investigation to determine any wrongdoing, or I want to say wrongdoing, just conducting an investigation. That's all.
We've never done that before, but if you think that would help.
It's not my call. I'm just saying that sometimes it's helpful to get out in front of something. But then again, that's a judgment call on your part and your media's part. That's all.
And he's correct, because the video from my vantage point is very disturbing. Again, just from what I've seen.
Right.
And there is no public statement on the video at all from anyone. And that is why the community is upset, and it's alarming. Again, from my vantage point, it's very disturbing. The community wants to know what the actions are appropriate. Is that the training? Will we see more of this? Will we see less of this? Who's going to make the statement, and how will it be dealt with? These are simple questions that I feel like in Shreveport we shouldn't be having this conversation in 2023, but here we are.
Sure.
And that's the thing. Just exactly as Councilman Jackson said, those are the questions from, just as you said, from that particular angle. When you see it, that it is quite alarming. It is very disenchanting because you see a young lady. So is this the training? Is this what we do? Why is this? Is this the procedure that happens when a situation arises like this? This is what you do when someone is tased? Are these the steps? Those are the questions that I have, because it's quite disenchanting.
Chief, start one of them on Monkhouse. I think it was on Saturday night. It started about 11 o'clock, but it went through Sunday morning. Another one was on the corner of Broadway and Jewella. I had two terrible domestic fights, and the one upon Monkhouse was terrible. Well, both of them were terrible. My question is, from the last council meeting, have we had any type of movement about the substations?
Yes, we have. Director Regal and I have been talking. She has directed one of her staff, I don't remember who she said the name was, to go out and begin the cleanup process on that site. We had planned to go out, she and I and staff, early last week before the storm came, and began to look at everything and began to make plans. Part of my crew, I've already notified them that they will be, the Traffic Bureau, relocating to that site, to an already existing building. So we're in the process of just a lot of moving pieces to take place.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Chief.
We are.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Just real quick, and back to Councilwoman Taylor and Dr. Jackson's comments. I saw the video and I was extremely disturbed myself towards the end, especially how it transpired and what ended up. One question I have is, what time did this incident happen? And then what park was it again?
It was
And-
Atkins Park, and it was around 2100 hours, somewhere between 8 and 9.
Okay, so it wasn't late at night, like way.
It was
late.
night. It was, yep, no, not
Like
2 or 3 o'clock
midnight,
in the morning.
2 o'clock in the morning.
It was
Okay, I
2100
was
hours.
unclear about that. And I also want to know, with the parks, are we closing these parks at certain times, or was this a special event? What?
I don't know, people were using the park, and if my memory serves me correctly, we had got the call to come there because of fights that were taking place.
Okay.
And so that's what we originally responded to. And looking at the body cam video when officers arrived, it was quite a scene that was happening.
Do those parks close at a specific hour? Are they have locks on the gates? I know.
I don't think that one has any gates, I don't
Okay.
believe. I'm not sure.
Not that in any way impacts what happened, but I don't, maybe we can do some prevention where this we don't get in this position again. But no, I really would encourage y'all to look real strong at that. I think one of the biggest concerns, besides the young lady being tased in the back, for me was that you've got an officer with a long gun on, fighting people. That could have been a disaster because it was just loosely hanging off of his shoulder. One of those, that they're fighting with could have taken that long gun and we'd have been in trouble.
Yes,
So, I mean, not that I'm second guessing y'all, but to me, it didn't look good either.
sure.
So,
Where's the dragon for me?
All right. Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Madam Clerk, is there a clerk's report?
No, sir.
Executive session, there are none. If there's nothing else to come before this meeting, y'all meet me at the Old Morrison at 6:30. But the business here is done.
is that the one on Old Minden Road?
Go back to that.